Only in Kentucky can a single county claim the longest plastic bridge in the world and the most famous coal miner's daughter. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky, one county at a time, all 120 of them. And today, I'm learning about Johnson County. If you haven't done it already, I hope you check out the other counties I've covered. They're all listed in the playlist on my profile. If I haven't covered yours yet, I'm going to get to it soon, I promise. As always, if I missed something, feel free to correct me in the comments so that way we can all learn together. Located deep in the eastern Kentucky coalfields, this is a landscape built on steep, heavily dissected mountains. The highest peak is Stuffy Knob near Oil Springs, rising to nearly 1,500 feet, while the lowest points drop to around 550 feet. Human settlement has always been forced into the narrow creek bottoms and stream terraces here. Communities naturally clustered where waterways were. And because everyone was forced to build in these low-lying valleys, the county has a long, really devastating history of flash floods with catastrophic waters wiping through the towns time and time again over the last century. The first documented Anglo-American settlement in the area was known as Harmon Station. It was established at a place called the Blockhouse Bottom in the Hager Hill area. By 1790, another small trading post was founded on a massive tract of land belonging to a man named George Lewis. And when the first time white settlers arrived at this specific spot, they found striking tribal art painted on the debarked trees near a natural salt lick. And because of this, they named the settlement Paint Lick Station. By 1824, a post office was established under the name Paint Creek. A decade later, the Kentucky Legislature officially created the town of Paintsville. In February 1843, Johnson County was formally carved out of Floyd, Lawrence, and Morgan counties. And the new county was named in honor of Richard Mentor Johnson, a hero of the War of 1812 who later became the Vice President of the United States. Paintsville naturally became the county seat, and the county conducted its very first official business in the spring of 1844. Civil War arrived in Johnson County with a strange bit of local politics. Because the region was so fiercely divided, the county actually passed an ordinance banning both the Union and Confederate flags from being flown anywhere in its jurisdiction. This attempt at absolute neutrality lasted only until Union Colonel James Garfield marched his brigade directly into Paintsville and hoisted the United States flag over the courthouse. Over 900 local men ultimately fought in the conflict, and the danger of guerrilla raids became so intense that the citizens secretly moved the official county records to the remote rural community of Flat Gap just to keep them safe. Following the Civil War, the county struggled with intense isolation. For decades, the only way to get supplies in or out was by horseback or by steamboats, navigating really tricky, shallow waters of the Big Sandy River. As the 20th century approached, the mountains of Johnson County were about to be cracked wide open, and the culture would change forever. The catalyst for this change was a man named John C.C. Mayo. Mayo was a gifted local school teacher who became fascinated by geology and the vast, untapped coal reserve sitting right beneath his neighbor's feet. He started buying up mineral rights across eastern Kentucky. Mayo had the ultimate hometown advantage, too. The locals were deeply suspicious of wealthy northern industrialists, but they trusted Mayo because he was one of their own. Unfortunately, this meant many families sold their mineral rights to him for pennies on the dollar, sometimes trading the fortunes buried underneath their farm for nothing more than a new shotgun or a few dollars. Mayo used his massive land holdings to lure the railroads into the mountains. In September of 1904, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway finally opened its Paintsville Depot. And that single moment completely transformed Johnson County. It ushered the great coal era, bringing in an influx of wealth, immigrants, and an industry that shattered the region's isolation. As a result, massive corporations like the Consolidation Coal Company and the Northeast Coal Company rushed in, opening huge underground mines and building entire company towns from scratch. The town of Van Leer is the most famous example. Incorporated in 1912 and named after a coal company director named Van Leer Black, the town grew to a population of over 4,000 people. It featured 5 massive underground mines that operated around the clock. Their workforce was an incredible cultural melting pot of local Appalachians, Irish, Italian, and Slavic immigrants. Interestingly, while the world above ground was heavily segregated, the mines below ground were often integrated, with black and white miners working side by side in the dark. Another company town, Valco, was built nearby and named after a steamboat that was itself named after Mayo's wife, Alice Jane Mayo, who went by the name Alka. Right as the coal boom was peaking, a secondary extraction boom hit the county. In 1917, a major oil and gas development began. And by 1922, the Johnson-McGuffin oil field was producing over 2 million barrels of oil, bringing even more wealth and workers into the region. Mayo used his incredible new fortune to drag Paintsville into the modern age. He helped develop banks, public utilities, and pave streets. Between 1905 and 1912, he built the legendary Mayo Mansion in Paintsville. The construction of this 43-room, three-story estate was a monumental undertaking. The massive sandstone blocks were cut out of their father's farm across the valley. They were then transported on a 3/4-mile aerial tram and then pulled through Paint Creek by teams of oxen during the dry season. Mayo imported over 100 Italian stone masons from Cincinnati just to complete the intricate work. He also financed the Mayo Memorial United Methodist Church right next door. The church features beautiful stained glass windows imported from Italy, a green tile roof, and a massive pipe organ donated directly by Andrew Carnegie. But Mayo's legacy is deeply polarizing today. While he built the foundational infrastructure of Paintsville, he's also viewed as the man who handed the wealth of Eastern Kentucky over to outside corporations, locking the region into an economic cycle of boom and bust that it still struggles with today. When the Great Depression hit, the coal industry slowed down significantly. But this era also brought crucial federal investment that helped shape the modern civic life of the county. The Works Progress Administration arrived in Johnson County, providing jobs and building essential public works. They constructed new roads, the Flat Gap School, the Oil Springs High School gym, and the beautiful stone clubhouse at the Paintsville Country Club in 1930. Now, you can't talk about Johnson County without talking about the music. US Route 23 runs right through the county and is officially designated as the Country Music Highway, and for a good reason. I've talked about it before, but this specific pocket of the Appalachian Mountains has produced an absurd amount of musical royalty. The most famous artist to emerge from these hills is undeniably Loretta Lynn. Born in 1932 in Butcher Holler, a small coal mining neighborhood that falls under the Van Leer Postal District. Her experiences growing up in this exact county, watching her father work in the Van Leer mines and her mother stretch every penny, directly inspired her legendary song, Coal Miner's Daughter. Her younger sister, country star Crystal Gale, was also born here. And today, fans from all over the world still travel down the winding hills to Van Leer to see her childhood cabin and visit the Mine No. 5 store, which is still operated by her family. But the talent doesn't stop there. Tyler Childers went to Paintsville High School, absorbing the stories and the gritty reality of the region into his songwriting. The county also produced artists like Hyla Brown and Jim Ford, and the city proudly honors this incredible music heritage at the US 23 Country Music Highway Museum in Paintsville, which showcases the artists who put Eastern Kentucky on the global map. Beyond the music, Johnson County has a vibrant tradition of unique community names and quirks. Take, for example, the unincorporated community of Tudor Key. In 1897, it was originally named Mingo by a local reverend, but the post office constantly mixed up their mail with the town of Wingo in western Kentucky. So in the 1930s, a local resident noticed a brand of shoe polish in a general store called Tudor Key. He suggested the name, and it stuck permanently. I hope someday there's a Kentucky Hopwater, Kentucky, who knows. There's also the community of White House, which was named after a literal large White House that riverboat captains used as a navigational landmark on the Big Sandy River. Another community, Red Bush, was originally called Enterprise until the postmaster renamed it after the vibrant red pin oak trees surrounding his office. Paintsville is a town that feels like a classic Appalachian gateway. Downtown is a mix of historic brick storefronts and modern additions centered around both Main Street and Court Street. In the 1960s, local leaders realized that they needed a way to promote the county's agricultural output. In 1962, a bank officer named Elman Davis helped launch the very first Kentucky Apple Festival in Paintsville. It was originally designed just to compete with the traditional Johnson County Fair, but the Apple Festival became so incredibly popular that it just completely replaced the county fair. Today, the Kentucky Apple Festival takes over downtown Paintsville every single October. The entire city shuts down for a massive parade, live concerts, and a pretty good car show, apparently. The traditions are incredibly specific to the area. There's the Terrapin Trot, which is an actual turtle race. There's the Ducky Derby, where thousands of rubber ducks are raced down Paint Creek. And for decades, the absolute pinnacle of the festival was the Apple Bowl. This was a fierce, legendary high school football rivalry game between Paintsville Independent and Johnson Central High School. The festival culture extends year-round. Every May, the city hosts the Spring Fling on Main Street, bringing vendors and music to the downtown corridor. In July, thousands of people flock to the area for the Awaken Conference, a massive annual Christian concert event. The Van Leer Historical Society keeps the memory of the coal camps alive with the annual Van Leer Town Celebration. They also operate the Coal Miners Museum inside the old Consolidation Coal Company office, which features fascinating exhibits, and Icky's 1950s snack shop serving up milkshakes and nostalgia to tourists and locals. As the 20th century progressed, the demographics of Johnson County shifted dramatically. The population hit its all-time peak in 1940 with about 26,000 people, but after World War II, the coal industry rapidly mechanized. The mines needed far fewer men to extract the same amount of coal. This triggered a massive outmigration as families left the mountains to find factory jobs in the north, fundamentally changing the social fabric of the county. By the year 2000, the population had stabilized around 23,000 people. The county was forced to transition away from pure extraction and build a new economy based on services, healthcare, and education. Paintsville as a county seat became the undisputed regional hub, anchored by the Paul B. Hall Regional Medical Center and the Big Sandy Community and Technical College. But Before that, the county also heavily invested in preserving its history and expanding outdoor recreation. In the 1980s, the state created Paintsville Lake State Park. But before the 1,100-acre lake was flooded, historians realized that several incredible mid-19th century buildings sitting on the valley floor were about to be lost forever. They carefully dismantled and relocated a one-room schoolhouse, a church, and a blacksmith shop, and a log cabin to higher ground. They reassembled them to create the Mountain Home Place, and today it operates as an incredible living history museum. Historic buildings inside the city were also saved from the wrecking ball by sheer community willpower. The SIP Theater in downtown Paintsville originally opened in 1932 as a bustling vaudeville house. And for decades, it was the premier entertainment venue in the region. But by 1994, the building was falling apart and facing certain demolition. Refusing to lose their history, a dedicated group of locals formed a foundation, raised the funds, restored the building, and reopened it. You can also visit the Stafford House on Broadway. Originally built in 1843 by John Stafford, one of the founders of Paintsville, it's the oldest surviving home in the county. And after sitting vacant for decades, it was recently purchased and restored to its former glory. And finally, Johnson County holds one of the more unexpected and bizarre engineering records in the entire world. In 1999, the community of River, Kentucky needed to replace the heavy wooden deck on a 420-foot pedestrian swinging bridge that crossed the Leviza Fork to the community of Offutt. The engineers made a highly unconventional choice. They replaced it entirely with glass fiber reinforced polymer composites. When the Forrest and Maxie Preston Memorial Bridge was completed, it officially beat out a bridge in Scotland to become the longest plastic bridge on planet Earth. So, that's Johnson County. What'd I get wrong this time?